So today I'm joined by Felix from Root and Rise, a D2C e-commerce consultancy for FMCG brands. Hi Felix, thanks for coming on. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks for coming on. I've been a follower, it's no secret, of your blog for a little while. I love the way that you're obviously passionate about delivering value to, around D2C e-commerce brands, which is the space that we tend to work in. So could you tell us a little bit about the process that goes into researching and adding all of your thoughts online?
Sure. You mean for the articles that
Yeah,
we
there's
tend
a
to
lot of
publish
articles
regularly?
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a busy few months because I feel like there's an awful lot happening in the world of D2C and e-commerce right now, and lots of people are confused about it. So, what we try and do is actually take a bit of a step back, usually from all the buzz and all the discussions that are going on, and take a sort of bigger picture macro view on the consumer products world in general. And fewer articles, but try and get a bit more perspective on what's going on, and also obviously look at as much of the data as we can find on different categories, on certain trends, when it comes to ad spend, when it comes to kind of conversion rates online, etc., and sort of get both the macro level view on the industry, but also try and get as granular with the sort of more specific data on what's actually happening, what on a consumer level, on a customer level, and try and come up with something that is useful but maybe shakes people up a little bit as well, and add some different perspective to it. That's what I sort of aim for with these, and yeah,
That
that's sort
must
of a bit of a process.
That must be quite difficult to go switch your brain from like the big picture thinking down to granular data and then back again. So yeah, that's impressive. But I know that off camera, you and I have talked before about the advantages and disadvantages native D2C brands have versus brands that may have been selling through other retailers or on other platforms before. And I know you've got some good thoughts to share on this. So I was hoping you could share with everyone.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting time right now because we've obviously seen sort of 10, 15 years of native D2C brands, and especially sort of very focused verticals to be really successful and really shake things up. But there's also a shift happening, and some people go extreme and say, oh, there's no room anymore for these kind of new vertical D2C brands, and the funding's drying up, etc., etc. But
Yeah.
that's obviously also not, it's not quite as extreme. But what is definitely happening right now is there's a few big shifts in the market that are making it a lot more realistic for established brands, whether they're in wholesale right now, whether they're selling through marketplaces primarily, to just do a lot more in their own D2C e-commerce channels and have a much better edge. So I think that's really kind of shifting the playing field quite a bit at the moment, which is primarily because the acquisition for new customers has just become so much more expensive. There's
Yeah.
nothing new here, but it's been really happening and accelerating the last couple of years. It keeps happening. So that's what a lot of investors have realized, why there's a little bit more cautious investment going into sort of pure D2C plays. But people are also realizing that because it's become so competitive a space, the margins are getting pushed quite a bit. So there's also a lot more data realizing that pure D2C commerce is tricky to make work. So these are the two main points that are really now giving the more established brands an edge in D2C commerce, as far as we can see it, because there's a brand there, there's an existing customer base that you can partly shift onto your online channels, onto your direct channels. But also what's really powerful is that there's an existing wholesale or retail part to the business, which can be complemented by a D2C e-commerce part. And we're seeing that with a lot of the digital native D2C brands, that they're starting to push more into wholesale and retail, because they're realizing that to build something really scalable, really profitable, you're kind of really benefiting from having both. And the crucial bit there is to just make sure that they're not silos. So, that's where I'm advising clients as well. So you need to be able to combine your learnings and the kind of the opportunities from a D2C e-commerce business with your existing retail and wholesale. So, there's lots more to say about it, but that's sort of the high level view I have on it.
Yeah, I know. I understand you that obviously we're trying to keep this in with the time frame. So, and I know you've got loads of great content on it. But and actually, I know this next point I wanted to make. I know you touched on it just now, but I wonder if you've got anything else to add about why you think it is that these big established brands are sometimes or seem to be slow or hesitant when investing into D2C.
Yeah, I mean, not just the big ones, right? But anyone
Or
who's been doing something for a while and it's successful is going to be cautious to shift things around. That's obviously the massive advantage that all these new startups and D2C brands have had. There's no legacy, there's no retailer relationships to manage or wholesaler relationships to manage and be sensitive about, or existing infrastructure, etc. They've just started from scratch and very capable of making lots of quick tests and iterations using any kind of platforms and software out of the box to just be very quick to iterate and very customer centric.
without worrying, like, oh, who is this going to affect? Are we allowed to do this because of X, Y, Z? And yeah.
Exactly. And, without having to shift around existing processes or,
Mhm.
team structures. So it's really about the mindset shift that needs to happen in brands that have been more focused on wholesale and retail that really makes the big difference, right? Because it's not the technical expertise is relatively easy to get to buy in. There's a lot of really good agencies, there's a lot of really good tools like yours and
Mhm.
others building on Shopify, but making that shift towards a more customer centric way of doing your marketing and your sales, that's a really big one, because people have come from a place maybe in wholesale retail where it's much more of a B2B business, and so there's some tough nuts to crack, I think, there, but because the multi-channel is already kind of set up, the opportunity is just so much bigger. But it's completely understandable that it's not super quick and easy to figure it out.
I think that's what puts a lot of people off, isn't it? Is the skill set as well, and potentially hiring and trying to develop this whole process that's going to take a long, long time to see any results. But I think deep down, everyone knows that it's something that they need to do. But what are the biggest things that you think you know established brands can learn from native D2C startups to help them thrive? Like, what would it typically look like if you were speaking to a client? What are the first things that you would say in general?
It's really not easy to directly apply it, right? Because like we just described, there tend to be different people with different backgrounds,
Yeah.
with kind of no legacy, etc. But of course, the ability to test things relatively quickly, it is obviously a massive factor that helps native D2C brands be quick. So whether that's around products, whether that's around target audiences, specific channels to use, and then obviously the creative and content to use on these channels, just building as agile a process as possible, while still putting enough of the insights work in there to actually come up with stuff that's good, that matches the brand. But it's that's the main ambition to have for more established brands as well, that you try and become more agile and customer centric. And yeah, what that usually means is really building out that insights framework. So just kind of making sure that you have a close connection to your customers and any data that gets generated by them. So that's super important, because that's also going to help the rest of the business, the wholesale routes, the retail routes. It's just really understanding the customer more closely, including all the customer journeys and flows and funnels, but also then using those kind of insights to be able to test and iterate more quickly. Again, for anyone working in a startup, it's like, yeah, that's sort of table stakes, but it's a whole other story to apply that to a business that's existing, that's successful on certain channels and retail, wholesale, or ecom. and sort of bringing that more closely together. So really, usually it's about finding the right prioritization and sequence for making these shifts, because it doesn't happen overnight. It shouldn't.
And
I
be
think.
disciplined as well. Being
Mm,
disciplined with it, because it's not an easy thing to just get up and do. You know,
no, completely, and taking the whole team into consideration. So for me, I have done a lot of work in startups and bigger, more established companies as well, but a lot in startups. And yes, you have to be really patient about it. And that these projects can take years to really become super successful. But still seeing progress every month, every couple of months, obviously. But yeah, just sort of finding the right kind of sequence and speed of changes and sort of experimentation, I think is really important. And that's why, I don't know, I tend to not rush it. My benefit is that I grew up in a family business that was run by the family for 100 years. So
nice.
at least I've learned that bit to kind of build things over the long run. It doesn't have to take that long, but it's yeah. I'm kind of, I've got that sort of dichotomy in my own mind between the startup world and the family business, and I think that's what it comes down to here as well.
Great. Thanks so much for your insights there, Felix. I know that Opinew will be adding you shortly into our experts directory in app, so our users will be able to have access to get in touch with you easily. But if any other brands would like to get in touch, what's the best way to do that, Felix?
Yeah, sure. Be great to have a chat with anyone, and love talking about these topics. So they can just email me on felix@rootsandrise.com, or just find me on LinkedIn, where I tend to post some stuff every now and then as well.
Perfect. Thanks very much, and I'll speak to you soon.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for coming on. Cheers.